too much noise today. I just need the road, the rain, and the hum of the engine.
There's this feeling I've carried for as long as I can remember, like I've always been slightly out of sync with the world around me. It's not something dramatic or visible to others, but it colors everything I experience. Even in the middle of laughter or love, even when life seems good, there's this quiet sense that I'm watching it all from a distance, like I'm playing a role I didn't fully choose. Have you ever felt that way? Sometimes I look around at people chasing after things, promotions, new cars, approval, perfection, and I wonder if they actually believe that these things will bring them lasting peace. Maybe it works for them, but for me, it all feels hollow. Not in a hopeless way, just like I already know where that road leads, and I'm no longer interested in following it. There was a time when I tried. I really did. I pushed myself to fit in, to care about the same things everyone else seemed to care about. I tried to lose myself in relationships, in ambition, in whatever normal looked like, but I always came back to the same place, feeling like a visitor in my own life. Not unhappy, just not home. For a long time, I thought this meant something was wrong with me, like maybe I was broken in a way I couldn't quite explain. I didn't have a label for it, and honestly, I didn't want one. I just needed to understand why I felt like I was living slightly outside the frame, close enough to touch the picture, but never quite inside it. I've started to see now that this isn't a flaw. It's a kind of awareness, an early sign that maybe I'm nearing the end of something deeper, some long, invisible cycle I can't quite name. It's like being on the edge of waking up from a dream you didn't know you were having. Everything around you still looks the same, but something inside has shifted. You begin to see through the gloss. You feel the thinness of it all. When I talk about this with people, which I rarely do, they sometimes think I mean depression or detachment or a fear of life. But it's not that. It's more like a calm detachment from illusion, like realizing that the stage and the props aren't real, and suddenly you can't take the play as seriously as you once did. You still show up, still speak your lines, still love the people around you. But you know there's something more. I can't say exactly when this began, but I know it's grown stronger with time. I find myself craving stillness more than stimulation. I'd rather sit with my thoughts than escape them. I'm not seeking answers from the outside anymore, not from books or gurus or systems. I've started listening inward, trusting that the knowing I've always sensed is already inside me. And the more I lean into that, the more I feel peaceful, even in chaos, even when things fall apart. I've begun to understand that this feeling of being outside the world is not loneliness, it's clarity. It's the quiet whisper that I've done this before, that I've lived so many lifetimes already, tried on so many identities, and now I'm just tired of pretending I'm something I'm not. There's no longer a desperate need to become someone or prove something. I don't want to win the game anymore, because I finally see that the game was never real in the first place. And maybe that's the first real step toward freedom. I still go through the motions of daily life. I work, I show up, I try to be kind, but underneath it all there's a gentle separation, like I'm here but not of this place, like I'm quietly waiting for something beyond the horizon, not in a way that avoids the present, but in a way that sees through it. If you've ever felt this too, that strange, subtle disconnect from the world, I want you to know you're not alone, you're not broken, you're waking up. You're starting to remember who you were before all the masks and roles and expectations. And maybe, just maybe, you're nearing the end of the cycle too. And if that's true, then this isn't the end. It's the beginning of something we can't yet put into words. Something truer, something freer, something real. There's something strange that happens when you start to notice the same moment more than once. not because it repeats, but because it feels like you've already lived it. Déjà vu, they call it. Most people shrug it off as a glitch in the brain, a random misfiring, but for me, it's different. It doesn't feel like confusion. It feels like recognition, a memory surfacing from somewhere far deeper than this life. I remember walking through a narrow street once, somewhere I had never been, and suddenly I knew what was around the next corner. I could feel the sunlight before it touched my face. I could smell the exact scent of bread from the bakery ahead. And when I turned that corner, every detail was exactly as I'd known it would be. Not because I'd seen it before, but because a part of me remembered it. These moments come and go like whispers from another timeline. Sometimes they feel like echoes from other lives. Not past or future, but parallel. I know how strange that sounds. I'm not saying I have memories of being a king or a monk or someone famous. No, it's subtler than that, more emotional. It's like catching glimpses of a world behind this one, a place where time doesn't move in a straight line. I've tried to make sense of it, tried to explain it away with science or logic, but every time I try to pin it down, it slips through my fingers. All I know is how it feels. It feels like I'm walking through a web of lives that are all connected by something deeper than memory. Sometimes I wonder if we're living all our lives at once, just through different windows, with consciousness hopping between them like waves on the same sea. And in those moments of déjà vu, it's like two windows line up, just for a second, and you catch sight of yourself, the you from another life, another path, and something clicks. You know this isn't the first time. You feel the deep hum of something eternal moving through you. There have been nights I've dreamed of places I've never visited, only to find them later, not in photographs, but in person. I remember once standing in front of a lake and my whole body froze. I'd never been there. I'd never even seen it before. But the way the light hit the water, the exact ripple of the breeze, it was all so familiar it made me dizzy. Not just a visual memory, but a soul memory, like my consciousness had already lived that moment in some other version of reality. And then there's that other kind of déjà vu, not of places but of emotions, that feeling of meeting someone for the first time and instantly knowing them, not just a surface connection, but a deep recognition that you can't explain. It's in the eyes, the silence between words, the way your energy softens without effort. I've had conversations that felt like reunions, moments where I wanted to say, "You found me again." I know how easy it is to write all of this off. We're taught to believe that time is a straight line, that the past is fixed, the future is unknown, and the present is all that's real. But what if that's just part of the illusion we're here to outgrow? What if time is more like a spiral or a river with many currents, and we are just dipping in and out, gathering pieces of ourselves from different points of existence? The more I've opened up to this idea, the less alone I feel. Because if that's true, then none of us are confined to just this life. None of us are limited to a single path. We are part of something much vaster. And sometimes our soul lets us glimpse that truth through these little cracks in the illusion. Cracks we call déjà vu. And maybe that's why these moments are growing stronger. Maybe they're not just random. Maybe they're signals. Signs that I'm getting closer to remembering, closer to waking up. Not just from the illusion of time, but from the belief that I am only this version of myself. There's something oddly comforting in that, to think that the part of me that feels out of place here might be the same part that's traveled through 1,000 lives and is now whispering, "We've done this. We're almost done. Just a little further." I don't need proof anymore. I don't need to convince anyone. I just follow the feeling, and every time it happens, every time I catch that flash of familiarity in a completely unfamiliar place, I smile. because I know something deeper is unfolding, something beyond logic, something eternal, and that, more than anything, helps me trust the path I'm on, even when I can't see the end. I used to be afraid of death, not in a dramatic way. I didn't obsess over it or lie awake dreading it. But the idea of not existing, of vanishing into nothingness, it used to make me uncomfortable, like a silence too loud to bear. I think most people feel that way. It's human. We're wired to survive, to cling to life, to protect the body as if it's all we are, but something shifted, gradually, quietly. It's hard to pinpoint when, but the fear started to fade, not because I convinced myself of anything, but because something inside me just remembered. Now, when I think about death, there's no panic, no tightness in my chest, just a soft, steady sense of knowing. It's like I've already walked through that door 1,000 times, and maybe I have. I think the more you live, really live, the more you begin to feel that death isn't a threat. It's not the enemy we've made it out to be. It's a threshold, a transition, like waking from a dream that felt so real, only to realize you were asleep the whole time. I've had moments, quiet ones usually, where I've felt closer to that other side than to this one, like brushing up against a veil I couldn't see but could feel. In those moments, there's no fear, only peace, a kind of peace I've never found in anything external, and I think that's because it doesn't come from this life. It comes from the part of me that knows, and the more I've leaned into that, the more I've come to believe that what we call death is just a return, not an ending, but a homecoming. The place where all the noise falls away and what's real finally remains. You know, sometimes I think the real fear isn't of death at all. It's of forgetting, of coming back again and again, playing out the same roles, the same pain, the same striving, without remembering who we really are. Because that's what makes the cycle so heavy. Not the living, not even the dying, but the forgetting. And maybe that's what starts to dissolve when you're on your last round, when your soul has seen enough, felt enough, grown tired of the game. You start to remember. You don't need anyone to tell you what comes next. You just feel it. You've done this before. You've let go of bodies, stories, lifetimes, and something inside you has always remained. I remember hearing once that death is like taking off a tight shoe. That made me smile. Not because life is unbearable, it's not, but because there's something about that image that rings true. This body, this personality, this identity. It's beautiful and meaningful, yes, but it's also temporary. It's not all we are. It never was. I've stopped seeing death as an interruption. Now it feels more like punctuation. A comma between sentences, not the end of the story. Maybe even a pause before the final chapter closes and something entirely new begins. It's funny how much peace comes when you stop resisting the end. You start to live differently. You're less afraid to speak your truth. You're less interested in wasting time pretending to be someone you're not. And you love more freely, not out of fear of losing, but out of knowing that nothing real can ever be lost. I think when we reach this point, when the fear of death turns into an understanding, it's a sign that we're nearing the end of the reincarnation cycle. Not because we've mastered anything, but because we've unlearned the illusion. We no longer believe that this life is all there is. We no longer cling to it like it's our only chance. And maybe that's the greatest freedom of all. Not needing to escape death, but embracing it as part of the larger rhythm. Life, death, awakening, over and over. Until finally there's nothing left to fear and nothing left to learn, only remembrance. If you've ever felt that strange calm about death, not indifference, but a quiet inner peace, then maybe you're feeling it too. Maybe a part of you remembers as well. And if so, you're not alone. We've been here before. And this time, maybe we're finally ready to move on. Have you ever had one of those days where everything lines up so perfectly, it feels like the universe is in on something with you? Not just coincidence, but something more intentional, like you're in sync with something bigger than yourself. That used to happen to me rarely, but lately it's been happening so often that I can't ignore it anymore. I'll think of someone and they call. I'll be grappling with a question, and then a random book falls off a shelf with the answer. I'll be feeling lost, and out of nowhere, the exact words I needed to hear come through a stranger, a lyric, a sign on the side of the road. It's eerie, but also kind of beautiful. At first, I brushed it off. I figured maybe I was just noticing patterns more or assigning meaning where there wasn't any. But the feeling wouldn't go away. That gentle nudge that life was starting to speak to me. Or maybe I was finally learning how to listen. It's like waking up inside the dream and realizing the dream is responding to your awareness. Not controlling it, not manipulating it, just gently reflecting it back to you, like a mirror that bends as you move. I used to think life was random. Now I'm starting to think it's anything but. There's a word for this, synchronicity. Carl Jung talked about it a lot. He described it as meaningful coincidences that defy logic, events that connect not through cause and effect, but through meaning. And honestly, that's the only explanation that makes sense to me anymore. These synchronicities have become little breadcrumbs, reminders that I'm not lost, that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, even when I don't understand why. They guide me like soft whispers in the dark, nudging me towards something I can't fully see yet. But I trust it, and I think that's the real shift, moving from doubt to trust, from trying to control everything to being willing to notice everything. It's a different way of living, less about chasing, more about paying attention. When you start noticing how life mirrors your thoughts, your feelings, your energy, you begin to realize just how deeply connected everything is. That maybe we're not passive participants in this world. Maybe we're co-creators. Maybe the reality we experience bends around the beliefs we hold and the energy we carry. And that changes things, because now I don't feel like I'm just reacting to life. I feel like I'm in a relationship with it, like I can speak to it, not with words, but with presence, with attention, with truth. The more conscious I've become of this connection, the more obvious it is. It's like the universe was always communicating, I just hadn't learned the language. Now it feels like it speaks in patterns, symbols, nudges, delays, and sudden clarity. And the more I trust that, the more life flows. I used to think everything had to be earned, that signs and blessings only came after struggle or effort. But now I see they were always there. I just wasn't in the state to receive them. I was too distracted, too focused on forcing things. And now, with this slower, softer awareness, the messages come easily, gently, like ripples on water that I no longer need to fight against. I'm not saying life is suddenly perfect. I still stumble, I still feel pain, but now, even in the mess, I look for the message. And almost always, it's there. Not always immediately, but in time, clarity comes. The lesson reveals itself. The thread connects and I feel seen. There's a strange paradox in this stage. The more you see through the illusion, the game, the stories, the roles, the more life opens up to you. You're no longer playing unconsciously, but you're still in the game. Only now you're playing with your eyes open. And maybe that's what nearing the end of the cycle means. Not leaving the illusion entirely, not yet, but recognizing it for what it is. Watching the code behind the dream. Smiling as the universe smiles back. If you're starting to notice this too, if the world is responding to your thoughts, if things align just when you need them to, if the timing feels too perfect to ignore, then maybe you're waking up too. Maybe you're beginning to see that the boundary between the inner and the outer was never really there. We are the dreamers and the dream, the question and the answer, the lost and the guide. And when you realize that, really feel that, life becomes something else entirely. It becomes sacred. There's a kind of silence that comes, not from loneliness, but from fullness. I didn't expect it. For most of my life, I carried this subtle restlessness, the feeling that there was always something else I needed to do, somewhere I needed to get, someone I needed to become. But lately, that urgency has gone quiet. It didn't disappear all at once. It softened, slowly, like a wave pulling back from the shore. And what it left behind was this strange, peaceful stillness. I used to think that when I finally got there, wherever there was, I'd feel fireworks, elation, something dramatic. But what came was this: stillness, no trumpets, no spotlight, just a soft internal exhale, the sense that I no longer needed to chase anything, not because I had everything, but because I finally saw through the illusion that I was ever lacking anything to begin with. You see, the world constantly tells us we're incomplete, that we need more success, more love, more validation, more status. And for a long time I believed it. I believed that if I could just achieve enough, prove enough, perfect enough, then I'd feel whole. But no matter what I accomplished, the feeling never stayed. It was like drinking salt water. The more I consumed, the thirstier I became. And now, here I am, sitting in a quiet room with no trophies on the shelf, no finish line in sight, and I finally feel complete. Not because I have it all, but because I've stopped needing it all. It's like my soul has played out every role it needed to. The overachiever, the seeker, the romantic, the rebel. And now, there's nothing left to prove, nothing left to pursue for the sake of identity, just the simple truth of being. I can still want things, I still dream, I still set intentions, but they're no longer coming from a place of deficiency. They're not about fixing or filling something. They're just an expression of life moving through me. A dance, not a chase. And this shift, it's subtle but profound. Because once you stop striving for something outside yourself to make you feel enough, you begin to realize you always were. That's when the hunger quiets. That's when the noise dies down. That's when you wake up one morning and realize you're not chasing the horizon anymore. You're standing in the middle of it. I don't think this kind of peace comes from giving up. I think it comes from seeing clearly, seeing that the entire system, the goals, the fears, the endless self-improvement was never the point. The point was remembering who you are underneath all of it, and who you are is already whole. It's a strange place to be, honestly, because when you stop chasing what everyone else is chasing, you also stop fitting into their narratives. You start to feel the gap, the quiet space where people expect you to strive, and instead, you just are. Sometimes people ask me what I'm working toward, what's next, what I want out of life, and I smile because I still have passions, of course. But the fire is different now. It's not burning to consume. It's burning to illuminate. I want to be more than I want to get. That alone changes everything. I think this is what it feels like to reach the final chapters of the soul's journey through this cycle. Not a dramatic finish, but a gentle release, a softening of the grip, a return to the simple truth that you don't need to become anything more to be worthy of love, peace, and joy. You are already it, and I know how that might sound, like a spiritual cliché, but I don't mean it abstractly. I mean it viscerally, like the way your chest feels after a long cry, or how your breath deepens when you realize the storm has passed. You don't need more. You just need to remember that. If you've felt this shift too, if your ambition has softened, if your goals feel quieter, if your drive to become has given way to a desire to simply be, then maybe you're standing here with me, in this quiet field at the edge of striving, and maybe, like me, you're discovering that this silence, it's sacred. There's something that happens when you begin to question what you've always believed was real. It doesn't hit like a thunderclap, it creeps in, quiet, unsettling, like a flicker in the corner of your vision. At first, you ignore it. Then you start noticing patterns, inconsistencies, moments when the world doesn't behave the way it's supposed to. And then the question forms, what if this reality isn't as solid as we think? I remember the moment it first hit me. I was watching sunlight hit the floor in my room, and I thought, what even is light? I mean, really? What is color when it's just waves interpreted by our brains? What is touch when atoms never actually make contact? What is time when even physicists admit it doesn't behave the way we experience it? That moment broke something open in me. Not in a bad way, more like cracking open a window you didn't know had been painted shut. I realized the world I thought I lived in might just be a beautifully convincing projection, a kind of shared dream. And once you see it that way, you can't unsee it. Reality starts to shimmer around the edges. I began to understand that everything I believed, my limits, my history, my identity, was based on perceptions, interpretations, programs I inherited without question. And when I started peeling them back, what remained was not confusion, but space, possibility. The awareness that if reality was an illusion, then freedom didn't lie in changing the illusion. It lay in waking up from it. Most people don't want to go that far, and I get it. It's unsettling to realize that the ground beneath your feet might not be solid, that your name, your story, your past, the very things you cling to, might be costumes in a play you forgot you were acting in. But the deeper I went, the more liberating it became. I started seeing how much of my pain came from taking the illusion seriously. I thought I was the role I played. I thought life was happening to me. But now I see how much of it was a reflection, a mirror showing me what I believed, feared, avoided. When I changed what I believed was real, the reflection shifted too. And honestly, that kind of realization changes the way you move through the world. You stop clinging so tightly. You stop reacting to every trigger like it's life or death. You begin to witness instead of fight, observe instead of resist. There's power in that, not the kind that dominates, the kind that frees. The more I studied this, not just spiritually, but scientifically, the more it made sense. I read about the holographic principle, about simulated realities, about how even space and time might be emergent properties, not fundamental truths. It blew my mind. And it also made perfect sense. If reality is, in essence, a projection, then what are we? I think we're consciousness, having a very convincing experience of limitation, like a drop of water that forgot it was the ocean, like light pretending to be a shadow for a while, just to understand contrast. And when we start to remember that, things change, not instantly, not in some grand mystical awakening, but in tiny shifts. The arguments you would have had, they don't matter as much. The goals that once consumed you, they lose their weight. The identity you protected so fiercely, it softens. Because now you're not trying to win the game, you're trying to wake up from it. And I don't mean that in a cynical way. I'm not saying the world is fake or meaningless. In fact, it's the opposite. Once you stop believing the illusion is reality, you can finally appreciate it as the experience it was meant to be. Temporary, beautiful, strange, and sacred. You start to play with it gently, like a lucid dreamer who knows they're dreaming, but still dances through the dream with love. You don't need to escape. You don't need to control. You just see. And that seeing is the beginning of freedom. If you've ever had that feeling that the world isn't quite what it seems, that there's something just behind the curtain, Don't ignore it. That's not madness. That's clarity. That's your soul tapping on the glass, saying, hey, there's more. More than the routine. More than the story. More than the endless loop of becoming. There's something behind this. Something vast, quiet, still. And the more you align with it, the more the illusion begins to dissolve. Not all at once, but enough to set you free. There's a moment I keep coming back to, not in memory, but in feeling. It's not tied to a place, a person, or even a specific experience. It's more like a whisper I've carried with me my entire life. A gentle knowing that everything I thought I was isn't really me. I don't mean that in a dramatic way. I'm not talking about some sudden identity crisis or existential spiral. It's more like a slow peeling away of everything I once used to define myself. My name, my story, my preferences, even my pain. One by one, they've become see-through, not gone, just no longer solid. And what's left is hard to describe. It's not another version of me. It's not even a better or wiser me. It's just presence. Something vast, wordless, untouched by all the layers I spent so long building up. It started quietly. I began noticing that the thoughts in my head weren't really mine. They came and went like passing weather, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel, often repetitive. But none of them were me. I began to see my emotions the same way. Not as truths, but as waves. Real, yes, but not permanent. Not defining. And then came the harder realization. Even my personality, the one I'd worked so hard to refine, to project, to defend, was just another mask. A useful one at times, but still a mask. The deeper I went, the more I began to feel like I was watching a character I used to be deeply attached to. And now I was just holding them with love, like an old photo, familiar, but no longer who I am. It's terrifying at first. The ego resists. It wants to be real. It wants to be the center. But as you start to soften your grip, something incredible happens. The fear gives way to freedom. You begin to realize that not being someone in the traditional sense isn't emptiness. It's spaciousness. It's peace. It's the end of pretending. And in that space, there's nothing left to defend. Nothing left to improve. Nothing left to protect. You're just here. And somehow that's enough. I used to think enlightenment was about becoming perfect, transcending suffering, gaining wisdom or power or divine insight. But now I think it's much simpler and much more profound. It's about seeing through the lie that you were ever separate to begin with. Not separate from others, not separate from life, not even separate from the pain you once tried so hard to avoid. There's a line I read once that stuck with me. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. I didn't understand it fully at the time, but now I feel it. We were never the waves. We were always the water. All the stories we've told ourselves of birth and death, of success and failure, of purpose and identity, they were never the full truth, just movements on the surface. Beautiful, yes, but temporary. And when you let them go, when you stop clinging to the wave, you fall back into the ocean. You dissolve into something timeless, not gone, just free. Maybe that's what it means to reach the end of the cycle, not to escape life, but to see through it, to remember that you were never the role you played. Never the journey, never the seeker. You were always what held the journey. And in that remembering, the whole illusion begins to fade, not because it was wrong or meaningless, but because its purpose is complete. You've lived enough, learned enough, let go enough, and now there's nothing left to do but return. Return to yourself, not the small, fragile you the world taught you to be, but the vast, quiet, limitless self that was there before the first breath. And maybe that's the real liberation, not becoming more, but realizing you were never anything less than everything.
If this felt meaningful to you, it might mean something to someone else too. So hit like, leave a comment, or subscribe. That's how YouTube knows to share it with others. Maybe together, we can help someone see things a little differently.